Hey everyone, it's Douglas here, and today we're going to have a look at the opening scene of The Dark Knight directed by Christopher Nolan. This is a little snippet that I've taken out from one of my ATAR tutoring classes, so I hope you guys find this valuable and enjoyable. Now the question we looked at in class was, how is the Joker represented in the opening scene of The Dark Knight directed by Christopher Nolan? So I know it's a very simple question, but the key course concept here is about representations. So we have to state how the Joker is represented during the opening scene. That's the first part. And the second part is answering the how of that. So we have to identify different techniques that the director has used to create this representation, whatever you want to say this representation is. So if we don't do those two things, we won't be answering the question. So doesn't matter how simple the question is, we always have to keep in mind what the question is asking of us from our response. Now, before we look at the scene, or before I show you the scene, there are a few things that I want you guys to keep in mind before you watch it. Okay? The first one is that this scene is not just a bank robbery. The average person who watches this opening scene, they'll be like, wow, this is a cool action scene, there's a bank robbery going on, blah, 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 blah. But the whole point of the scene is to actually construct a representation of the Joker. So think about how the audience will feel when they first meet the Joker and first see the Joker and what he does. Think about what the audience will be thinking about in terms of who this person is. So this is all tied together with how the Joker is represented. So since we're talking about techniques and how a character is represented, we have to think about characterization. So I'm sure all of you have learned this little acronym or acrostic poem in year 8 or year 9 in terms of how a character is created. We have S, A, and O. So first one is S, speech. So what does the character say and how do they say it? That's very important. A is appearance. So what do they look like? Because different appearances, different colors, different shapes have different connotations. A is for actions. What do they do? How do they do it? How do they behave? So body language is a very important one. And O is others. So others is what other people think about this character. In this case, it's very, very important because part of how the Joker is portrayed in this opening scene is through the dialogue between the other bank robbers talking about the Joker and the rumors that they've heard about him. So that 4 elements there, really, really important in how the Joker is represented or portrayed to the audience. And of course, since this is a film, there's a bunch of different filmic techniques we have to think about. I'm sure everybody knows this, but remember again, it's important not to just say, oh, camera angles are used. Obviously camera angles are used, or different shots are used, or sound effects are used, but to be specific when describing what sort of camera angle, or what sort of sound effects, or what type of music it is, or is it a high pitch, or is it low pitch, is it bright lighting, is it shadowed, is it really dark, what's highlighted, and so on and so on and so on. So when we think about techniques, try to be specific when you're writing down your notes. Okay, welcome back. I hope you watched that video clip multiple times and got tons of notes on it, but let's get back to the question in terms of how we can answer the question and how I plan to address the question. So I'll write the question up here again in more simpler terms. So it's basically, how is the Joker represented? Okay. It's a very simple question. We just have to answer how the Joker is represented. Oops, that's not right. Here we go. Okay. So the way you address this question is, first of all, we need some first impressions on how the Joker is represented. So we don't want to look for the specific word straight away, because that's very difficult to find the perfect descriptor in terms of how the Joker is represented. So what I actually teach my students is we want to kind of do a bit of a brainstorm and start with some simple ideas first. So to get started, or to get past the writer's block, we go, first of all, is it a good or bad representation? I think everyone can agree it's bad, it's not good. Okay, that's the first step. But then the second step is we want to get more specific. So every time we pick a word or we do some brainstorming, we want to be more specific in our answers. So what do we mean by bad here? Well, there's a lot of different ways we can think about it. He's bad because he's evil. He's bad because he's a murderer. Maybe you can say that he's a criminal. He's crazy. He likes to kill. So don't just think that you have to come up with phrases. You can come up with, come up with words. You can come up with phrases as well. Oops. Likes to phrases. Nope. Likes to murder. Sorry. Anything else? He likes to murder or kill. He's a psychopath. Sociopath. Whatever. Okay. So this is what you should be doing. Sociopath, not me. But the whole idea is that we brainstorm a bunch of different words and then we go back over the list. So let's say I think to myself, all right, that's enough. Well, I spent 1 minute brainstorming different words. Let's think of, do I like any of these? So I think I like evil because I think he's evil. He's portrayed to be evil. Maybe he's crazy, psychopath, whatever, right? So then I start to think, what's a better way to describe him, or better way to describe how the Joker is represented without just saying he's evil, because evil is very basic. What type of evil is he? So maybe I go onto Google and I type evil into the thesaurus, or crazy into the thesaurus, or deranged, or whatever, and I come up with a bunch of synonyms. And maybe I pick I pick a few of the synonyms which I feel most aptly describes how the Joker is represented. So maybe for evil, I have twisted. I have sadistic, sinister, whatever, right? In terms of murderer, I have scary, chaotic is a good one, because obviously in The Dark Knight, one of the major themes is chaos versus order, so being represented as chaotic is a very good one. In terms of him being a criminal, we can talk about him being a criminal mastermind, maybe. What else? Maybe he's very precise, right? So he looks pretty crazy, but he's actually really smart. He's intelligent. And that kind of makes him scary. Oops. So scary should be a thing by its own. That's a bit messy, but that's okay. So a lot of these things are related. Likes to murder and kill. Yeah, you can describe him as psychopathic, maybe. So the whole point is we start from something very basic, which is good or bad, and then we start to become more specific in terms of how we describe the Joker as represented. And once we have a good idea of we have a good range of descriptors or phrases that we want to say the Joker is represented as in the scene, we can go across and say, which one's our favorite? Which one do we want to write about? Which one do you feel is most strongly associated with the Joker, in your opinion? For me, I like twisted and sinister. So really my answer, my topic sentence, my answer to the question is, the Joker is, represented to be twisted and sinister. Or we can add evil, right? He's basically evil, so we can come up with different synonyms for that. Okay, and so right here, what we've done actually is we've come up with our topic sentence. So let me clear this board. Yoink. Clear canvas. Okay, so let me clear this board. I write out my topic sentence again. In shorthand, so represented to be evil, sinister, twisted. Those are the adjectives that I'm going to use to describe how the Joker is represented. And now, since I have an answer to the question, I have something that I'm aiming towards. So I'm aiming to argue that the Joker is represented to be evil, sinister, and twisted. Now I can start looking for pieces of evidence or techniques to support this. So it's very important that when we're following this, I think you guys use teal structure now, right? When you're following a teal structure, so this is evidence 1, explanation 1, evidence 2, explanation 2, and then you have your link back. So it's very important when you have your teal structure that you write out your topic sentence first. The reason why you want to do that is because if you don't have your topic sentence or you don't have an answer to the question, then why would you start looking at techniques? Because you have no idea what you're arguing. So a big mistake that I see a lot of my students make is when they have a text, or whether that's like a written text or an image or a video, all they do is they just start looking at techniques. Well, that's very helpful, right? Because how is that going to help you answer the question? You don't even know what you're using those techniques to argue. So one thing you have to do is put the brakes on that first, and first of all, look at your topic sentence. Okay, your answer to the question, what are you arguing first? Then, and only then, you look for evidence to support that. Okay, so this is our teal structure, and this is what we're going to be using. So really what we're going to be using is, we have two pieces of evidence, or if you want to be more sophisticated in your response, two groups of evidence that work together. But for now, let's keep it simple. Two pieces of evidence to support our topic sentence. Okay, so most of the time I actually just plan it as dot points. So I have my evidence, explanation, and link back. But for the purposes of teaching you guys, I am going to do it graphically. So I'm just going to clear the board. At the top, my topic sentence. So evil and twisted. This is basically my shorthand topic sentence. And now I'm going to have my explanation and evidence. So it's up to you what pieces of evidence you want to use or what explanations you want to use. I have something prepared from earlier, so I don't have to think about this on the spot. Okay. So I've decided to have a look at the clown masks. So for my evidence, I'm going to talk about, or my first piece of evidence, I'm going to talk about the clown masks. And the clown masks themselves are not pieces of evidence. We have to describe how they are a technique, right? So I would say that it's costume, and I want to describe how this costume has been deliberately designed. So it's ugly, grotesque features, what else? Smeared paint. Okay, now I have to explain how this makes the Joker sinister and evil and twisted. So the explanation is the most important part. And in your plan, you have to be very specific with your explanation. So before you even start writing a response, I would recommend that you get your explanation down in dot points so that you know what you're going to write is going to make sense. So a lot of people, they kind of get pressured for time. What they do is they think, oh, I'm not going to have enough time to write my paragraph, so I'm going to not spend time planning. And that's the worst thing you can do, because what ends up happening is your response is not going to make any sense. Why? Because you didn't plan what you're going to write, you just started writing. Okay, so for your explanation, I'll write that in green. Explanation. We want it to be in detail. So how are we going to link this to clown mask? The fact that it's ugly, it has grotesque features, the smeared paint, the design of the clown masks makes the Joker sinister and evil and twisted. Well, first of all, my first point of my explanation is that, well, have a look at what clowns are connotated with, or the connotations of clowns. Usually they make people happy and so on, right? So clowns are supposed to make children happy. They appear at children's birthday parties, so they have a happy, fun connotation. Now the thing is, clowns also have a different connotation. That's from the horror genre, right? Oops. So what I'm saying is that the director has kind of borrowed this theme of clowns from the horror genre and then applied it in this sense, and they're kind of corrupting that innocent connotation or that innocent idea of clowns. And that also, you can also argue that they're playing on a phobia of clowns, and obviously that's linked to how he's sinister, evil, and twisted. Corrupting idea of clowns. Okay, you can explain that phobia if you want to. And then finally, we can explain that because he's using this, because the Joker is using this, using masks, it shows that he's sinister and evil and twisted. It represents his personality. Okay, so that's a very basic description, very simple technique. But the whole point of it is to just show you guys something simple that you can do. If you write this well, it's going to be perfectly fine. You can get an A in English if you analyze simple techniques and explain them well. Okay, let's have a look at something a bit more complex. So I'm actually going to need more space here. So I'm going to bring this up here. So evidence 2. So instead of just talking about a single piece of evidence now, I'm going to talk about a group of evidences or group of techniques that have been used to create this sinister and evil aesthetic. So the first one, this happens during the scene where the Joker reveals his face, right? And there's the close-up to the guy with the bank manager, that's right. So I'm going to talk about reveal of Joker's face. And then many different techniques working together to kind of create this sinister and evil and twisted representation. So the first one is the music. So there's the tonal change of the music. And it's very unsettling. So I'm describing what the music is like. I'm being specific. I'm not just saying music is used. I'm describing specifically what type of music is used and what effect it creates. I'm also talking about the lighting. So there's a lot of shadow on his face. What happens when someone's face is covered in darkness? What kind of idea does that create? Evil, villainous, right? What else? There's the close-up camera shot. So there's a close-up shot. So I'm not just saying camera angles are used, I'm saying what type of shot it is. So it's a close-up shot. And this kind of emphasizes his scars on the side of his lips. They're actually called Glasgow smiles. Oh, it's a Glasgow smile. Those scars are called a Glasgow smile. So you can see how they've gotten inspiration from real life things. There's the yellow teeth. There's the patchy / ugly makeup. And then there's also the tone of his voice when he says that line, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stranger, right? So tone, voice, deep, and demonic. So you can see I'm starting to run out of space. So really, all of this is essentially creating this very evil, dark, twisted ideas or aesthetic. It's a certain look that he portrays, right? And that's part of characterization. So evil, dark, twisted ideas or aesthetic, and therefore that links to the fact that he's represented through these techniques to be sinister and evil and twisted. So we can see here the first piece of evidence, evidence 1. We're only talking about the clown mask, that's perfectly fine. In evidence 2, or in part of our paragraph in the second piece of evidence, we are talking about a bunch of different techniques that all work together to create the same effect. And that creates a stronger argument because we have multiple pieces of evidence pointing towards the same direction now. And that shows sophistication in terms of understanding how techniques are used to create an effect. Typically, it's not just one technique that the director uses, but everything in the scene is carefully constructed to have that certain effect. In this case, it's to create a certain representation of the Joker. So let's move on now to the paragraph that I actually created from this plan. Okay, so this is the paragraph that I've created from the plan. It's not exact because obviously I wrote this quite a few weeks ago or a couple months ago for my class, and I'm only pulling it up again, so bear with me. In the opening scene of The Dark Knight by Christopher Nolan, the Joker is portrayed to be an evil and twisted criminal. The Joker and his crew all wear clown masks. These masks contain grotesque features with smeared paint, portraying a grotesque and sinister aesthetic. Clowns are also typically connotated with joy and cheer. However, Nolan subverts this connotation and draws from the corrupted idea of clowns from horror genres, representing the Joker as a sinister character who uses fear as a weapon. Nolan utilizes numerous techniques to emphasize the terrifying and unsettling nature of the Joker's true face during its reveal. During this reveal, his face is heavily shadowed, with the unsettling features such as his facial scars, smeared makeup, and yellowish teeth visible through the close-up shot, emphasizing his twisted nature. Furthermore, the reveal is accompanied by a tonal change in the music and is synchronized with the delivery of the line, "I believe whatever does not kill you simply makes you stranger." The line is delivered in a deep, demonic tone, further illustrating the dark and twisted aesthetic the Joker portrays. These techniques highlights the Joker's twisted and demented character, building upon the unsettling atmosphere already established through the use of clown masks when it's revealed that his true face is more unsettling than the masks themselves. By drawing from the connotations of clowns from horror genres and through the combination of techniques during the Joker's reveal, Nolan constructs a dark, twisted, and evil representation of the Joker. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you have any questions, don't be afraid to leave a comment down below. Thank you.